Hi there, I'm John from CNCKing.com, and today we'll make this custom shelf for my son. The material I used to make this shelf is actually 3/4 inch MDF, and MDF is never the right thickness, and you have to measure it, of course, before you cut it out. So whenever I do design work, the first thing I do is measure out the thickness of the wood, or sawdust and resin, and then based on that, I know roughly how to make things interlock. Now the purpose of this shelf is because in Simon's room, when you're walking in through the door, there's a dead area that's basically a corner between his bed and the door, and stuff just accumulates there and just piles up for no real reason. And as a result, I thought, well, I'll just make him some shelving for that, so it'd actually be something useful. And this is actually the height of his bed. So he can put books and other things on top of here that are close to his bed. So before he goes to bed at night, he can read some books and so forth. So another thing to keep in mind is I did his closet a couple months ago, and I needed 2 more extra little panels. And I never got around to making the panels as a backing for his closet. And when I designed this, I thought, well, hey, I got 2 spots here that I originally had them as solid. And I thought, well, I'll just use that for the backing, which is where that's going to go. And by default, I actually have a better design because it allows light to go through here. I didn't imagine how dark it would actually be having a corner like this where everything's closed off. Although the furniture is always different, the process is generally the same. The first thing I do is do a 3D model of what I want to design. After that, I do the modifications in 2D because there's some things that are easier to do in 2D than in 3D. And after that, I lay them out on the board, or as you see here, the sheet of MDF. After that, I assign the tool paths and the different tools I want to use, and then I go ahead and cut it. Now, the cutting is pretty much a seamless process. It sounds simple, I just press a button, and really, at the end of the day, that's essentially what I do. But all the stuff beforehand is not pressing a button. It's taken me quite a few years to learn how to do all this stuff, and I used to run another business doing custom modeling, so that's why I sort of know the way to do it the other way. Now when it comes to fabricating MDF, the nice thing about it is that it really accepts paint very, very well. And the extra bonus with modern paint is that you can literally paint something, and by the time you're done one side, you can actually paint a second coat over it, half an hour to 20 minutes later. So you do like 4 or 5 coats in a day, in a session, in one shot, and it works really, really well. Now then, of course, you gotta let it cure over 24 or 48 hours before you do the assembly, but that's what I did here. So that way, before I assemble it, I have most of the paint already done, especially in spots that are harder to paint. It's easier to paint when something's flat than when it's assembled. And then once it's assembled, well then I put another layer of paint everywhere where you still see the edges of the MDF that was just easier to paint after assembly. Now, when I assemble something like this here, there's a lot of things you realize in your design that you should have done better, or modifications and so forth. In this case here, the most obvious change that I would have done was that I allowed the router to continue on for the slots. And that's why you see those little sort of darker spots right in the middle of it, where the 2 middle shelves are. And that was just something you don't think about when you're designing and going through the whole process. Then when you do the final assembly, you go, oh, I forgot to do that. But the next time I do this, now I remember, now I know what to do next time. The reason I went with MDF for this project here is when I want to practice making more and more kind of custom furniture. I kind of enjoy it, but it can get really, really expensive very fast, especially if you go into painting and those kind of things. So I figure I'll just cut my teeth on small projects here and there with it. And part of that is using MDF because it's very cost effective. I can cut it very easily in the shop. And the extra bonus over plywood and any other material that I know of is that if you have something off by like a 1/4 inch or what have you, you can just sand it right down. This is just sawdust and resin. It sands incredibly easily and incredibly well. And as a bonus, it also paints incredibly well. So paint just adheres to it wonderfully. And you can see how everything sort of fits together. You can see a couple of my mistakes as well. So one are these shelves were held in place using slots. I forgot to close off the slots here because I wanted the router bit to go all the way through, but I didn't have to go all the way across the board, and that's why you have these holes. Again, not a big deal, part of the learning process. Other changes I'd probably do to this would make the construction a little bit less a little bit more tolerance. I tend to design things very, very tight and everything to fit perfectly. And that works wonderfully for a lot of projects. But when it comes to furniture, you need to have a little bit of give and take because you're using glue and you're using, in this case, a nail gun, and you're using a whole bunch of other stuff. And also paint. You know, paint actually adds thickness to material. You don't realize it until you got to put it in the slot and you find out, well, I painted this yesterday, it fit perfectly. And today the paint is dry and it doesn't fit in properly anymore. So if you're looking for custom furniture, or if you already have a design you want me to cut out and ship to you, let me know. We'll just go to CNCKing.com. I'll send you off a quote, let me know the materials, and we'll make it for you and ship it right to your door.